Good morning, 12th standard students. Today we are going to study about network operating system. As this word suggests that it is an operating system which is very helpful for creating a network. So a network operating system that provides the connectivity among a number of autonomous computers is called a network operating system. So there are many computers in a network, and this especially an operating system in a server who is serving all the clients around is taking care of all the activity important for serving the networks, in that all the computers in that network. So network operating system includes special functions for connecting computers and devices into a local area network or inner network. A typical configuration for a network operating system is a collection of personal computers along with a common printer, server, and file server for archival storage, all tied together by local network. So means in a network, what we have is a common printer, a server or a file server, where and then a storage device where all the node computer can save their work, and one server is taking control of all those nodes in a workstation. So we need a powerful network operating system in such kind of servers. Some popular network operating systems are Novell Network, Windows NT 2000, Linux, Sun Solaris, Unix. The network operating system which was first developed is Novell Network. It was developed in 1983. This is a diagram of network operating system. Here we can see a central computer surrounded at all those workstations, and the server has got a network operating system. And some features of network operating system are: it allows multiple computers to connect so that they can share data, files, and hardware devices. We have already discussed about a network, computer network, where we can share files and resources, and where resources means hardware devices like printer, scanner, web cameras, and extra devices. So it provides security features such as authentication, logon restriction, and access control. So network operating system in a server has an capability of providing a security feature such as authentication means only the authorized user can log into that network. Nobody without an authentication can access that network. So there is a logon restriction and access control. So it provides remote access to the device. Obviously, when there are some hardware resources connected to the network, so all the other network nodes computer in a workstation can access those hardwares remotely. It is because of the network operating system. So it provides file, print, web service, and backup services. So as we are sharing the printer in a network, so print commands and web services commands and services, other services can also be provided through this network operating system. So it supports network internet working such as routing the WAN ports. So with the help of WAN ports also, this network of a computer can be established. So it detects the new hardware whenever it is added to the system. So whenever new hardware resources is added to a network, so it is always it detects the network operating system, detect it and make it usable for a entire network. So the example of one network operating system is Linux. So now we are going to study about a Linux. So Linux OS or operating system is a freely distributable operating system based on Unix, which can be installed on PCs, laptops, netbooks, mobile, video, game consoles, servers, supercomputers, and more. So Linux is a open source operating system, means it is freely available, no licensing is required whatsoever, and we do not have to spend a single penny for using this operating system because it is totally free. Not only this operating system is free, but it accepts the amendment and the changes in the operating system itself. So users can use it and they can change their operating system, and it is totally accepted by the Linux. The Linux operating system is frequently packaged as a Linux distribution for both desktop and server use and includes the Linux kernel as well as supporting tools. So here we are talking about a Linux kernel. Linux kernel means Linux file system where it is taking care of all the requirement for an operating system to work in a computer, whether it is a hard server or a client. Some popular Linux operating system distribution include Debian, Ubuntu, Fedora, Red Hat, etc. Linux performs many of the same functions as Unix, Macintosh, Windows, and Windows NT does. So it is, though it is free, but it has got all the features of the other, like in other operating system which are paid, such as Unix, Macintosh, or your Apple computers, Windows and Windows NT. So it was developed by Linus Torvalds in 1991. As already told that Linux is an open source software, it is also known as product of internet because internet is used to download lots and lots of softwares. So the most powerful software that we can download from the internet and that is free is Linux. That is why it is called the product of internet. Linux is a multi-user operating system and is very fast and stable operating system. So multi-user can work in an operating system. It provides an accessibility of accessing more user in a system, and Linux is a multi-user operating system. That is why we can download its distribution from the following websites like Reddit.com, Ubuntu.com, GetFedora.com. So these are the websites which are providing the free Linux operating system online. So talking more about Linux, so what are the basic structure of Linux? How this Linux operating system works? What are the basic components of Linux? And there are many components, but the major we will talk about the major three components of Linux, and these are kernel, shell, and application. So we can see a diagram of a structure, Linux structure, where we can see that a kernel is a hardware and it's a command which makes a system understandable about all the component attached to a computer. It has got all the system files. It is just like in a system file in an operating system. And then shell is a command prompt where we give a command for a hardware to work, and we give a command to a system, and then it forward those command and make the hardware work accordingly. And simultaneously, we have some got applications which also get the command from a shell prompt and make the hardwares to work accordingly. So these are application users, give the command. So this is how it works. So in a hierarchical form also we can understand that applications are loaded into a computer, and through a shell a user can give a command, and the kernel or the file system of a Linux uh, translates all those commands coming through a shell to the hardware to make the work done. This is how Linux works. So the first component of a Linux operating system is kernel, and the Linux kernel is a main component of a Linux operating system. Kernel is a core interface between a computer's hardware and its processes. It communicates between the two and managing resources as efficiently as possible. So means kernel is like a middleman which translates the low level language uh, into a high level language and high level language into a low level language. So the user's command, the command that user gives to a computer is in high level language, and but computer always understand a low level language, but then comes the kernel in between and it translates the HLL to LLL. So this is how it works. So kernel is a program that is responsible for allocating the computer resources and scheduling the user job in fair manner. Now let us study the various function a Linux kernel can perform. First is a memory management. Kernel keeps track of how much memory is used to. So memory allocation is done by the kernel. Process management. It determines which process can use the CPU and for how much long interval. Kernel allows the execution of application and support them with providing required resources. So it also help in processing the management, so process management. So when it receives an input, then it has to do the processing of those input and give us a output. And for processing also, it is managing everything for a computer, whatever is required for the processing of an input. Device management. Kernel acts as a mediator or interpreter between a hardware and a processor. It maintains a list of available devices and provides the input-output to allow drivers to physically access their devices through some port. So as told earlier that kernel like a middleman, it's like a mediator between the user and the machine, because user does not know the language of the machine usually, and machine does not understand the user's command directly. So in kernel in between play a very important role and make the communication possible between the user and the machine. Next is system call. A system call is a mechanism used by the application program to request a service from the operating system. Kernel provides an API to invoke a system call. API stands for Application Programming Interface. It is Application Programming Interface. So you must write down the full form of APIs. So kernel provides an API to invoke the system call. So application programming interface is also been taken care by the kernels. Next feature is security. Kernel also provides protection from faults and from malicious behavior. So these are the feature of kernel. The kernel is invisible to the user as it is a software, like it's a software in a computer which user cannot see. So it works within its own little world called kernel space, where it allocates memory and keeps track of where everything is stored. Whereas what the user sees, like web browsers, file, etc., are known as a user space, and these application interact with the kernel via system call interface, which is SCI. So in today's class, we studied about network operating system, its features, types, an example of network operating system, and in example we studied about the Linux, its components, and we studied about its kernel, and afterwards and finally we have studied about the function performed by Linux kernel. So in our next video we'll study about the shell and application of Linux. So till then, take care and stay safe. Thank you very much.